What if I told you there was someone worse than one of the worst villains in Marvel Comics? Someone more evil, more desperate, more insane than the perennial thorn in Captain America's side, the Red Skull. What if I told you that that narcissist managed to have a daughter? Let's talk about Sinthea Shmidt, the villain known as Sin. Thanks for watching JL's Comics. If you liked the video, hit the thumbs up and subscribe. I upload videos just like this every week. Let's jump into our story. In 1889, a German boy named Johann Schmidt was orphaned by Hermann and Martha Schmidt after Martha died giving birth to him, and his father committed suicide. This abandonment was the start of Johann's loathing for all of humanity. He became a street urchin, taking on odd jobs, and after a time, he met and even impressed Adolf Hitler while working as a bellboy at a hotel, and so Adolf Hitler took young Johann into his Third Reich as an apprentice, and through this connection, Johann transformed into the powerful and fearsome Red Skull. After a series of clashes with costumed heroes like Captain America and his sidekick Bucky, Red Skull perished, but then was revived by a secret group called Them. He went to the Isle of Exiles to recover and brood, and that's when he decided he needed an heir, a boy to apprentice in the way that the Führer coached him. So on Exile Island, he saw a washerwoman that reminded him of his mother, and he impregnated her, siring a daughter that he named Sinthea Shmidt. Like his own mother, the washroom lady died giving birth to Sinthea. When he saw what happened and that she was a baby girl, not a boy, Red Skull almost killed the newborn baby by carrying her out into the stormy night, and upon a rocky outcropping overlooking the sea, he almost tossed her into the raging waters below. But on some wild impulse, it was one of his disciples named Susan Scarbo, who'd eventually be Suprema, and then Mother Night told him not to do it. Instead, she had an offer, and he hired her to supervise Cynthia's upbringing, to be her nanny, and to raise her. So he sent Cynthia and the nanny to Skull House in upstate New York to be raised by Susan, only visiting her for once a month for special tutoring. There she only knew horror and abuse and hatred. She was tortured psychologically and physically, and her mind broke. After a few years, Red Skull met up with him and performed age-accelerating experiments on his own daughter with his Deus Machina machine, feeding her dark visions, and has transformed her from Sinthea Shmidt into Mother Superior, a character, by way of the machine, who also gained psionic powers. Red Skull also took in 4 other street urchins, 4 girls that he preached to and taught his hatred and conditioned them to look up to his daughter. He forced them to age up just like Cynthia, and the 4 orphans, now artificially adults, became the Sisters of Sin, with Cynthia, the Mother Superior, as their leader. The Sisters of Sin became this quasi-religious cult that fed upon violence and hatred. Now as Mother Superior, Cynthia brought Baron Helmut Zemo to Skull House to meet her father. "Teach my daughter as I have taught you," Red Skull said to him. Together they kidnapped Roger's friend Dave Cox and tortured him and turned him into a mace-wielding villain called the Slayer. Mother Superior sent the Slayer after Captain America and Bucky as a lesson to Zemo. When Slayer refused to kill Bucky, she put him in a coma. And back at Skull House, she took Zemo to her church to meet her nuns, the Sisters of Sin. The gas that had kept Red Skull alive all those years was wearing off, and he began quickly aging and dying, and now even more desperate for an heir, it became an obsession, and he turned to Baron Zemo instead of his daughter to carry on for him. Captain America and Bucky went to the old Skull House and ran into the Sisters of Sin, who enthralled them with dreams and pleasure, while Sister Death tried to crush the life right out of Captain America. They ended up trapping the 2 heroes inside of Skull House. Meanwhile, the sisters went out and attacked Sam Wilson, the Falcon, knocking him out, and brought him too to Mother Superior. And back at the mansion, Cap and Bucky were let out of the trap, and they ended up in a chamber that made them old too, while Red Skull, Zemo, and Cynthia looked on from another room. So this old Captain America ended up battling Mother Superior. She kicked old man Steve Rogers to the ground as she declared, "You're outclassed, old man." The Red Skull raised his daughter to be the Beast Goddess, the avatar of primitive savagery. When Steve realized that she was Red Skull's daughter, he realized he didn't want to fight her. His fight was with her father. So he took her down with his shield, and as she cowered on the ground, he pleaded with her to stop, to let it end. And instead of stopping though, she revealed that she had Falcon, Nomad, Cap's friend Arnie Roth, and Cap's girlfriend Bernie Rosenthal as prisoners. And as he was distracted by this revelation, Mother Superior lunged and stabbed Steve Rogers in the neck, and he collapsed to the ground. Her moment of victory was fleeting, however, as Zemo and her father Red Skull attacked. He was disgusted that she'd barely won using deceit and petty trickery, not grand, majestic deceit, as he phrased it, and so he bellowed out that Baron Zemo would officially be his heir instead of her. While Red Skull locked Captain America in the basement with him to die, Mother Superior and Zemo battled it out elsewhere in Skull House, crashing through walls as punches and kicks flew. Cap's friends escaped and ended up fighting with Sin's disciples. Zemo and Sin crashed through a wall where the others were fighting, and she kneeled above Zemo, choking the life out of him as she directed all her rage right at him. After she bested him and he fell face first to the ground, she declared that the only way she'd assume the Red Skull's crown of evil was to take it from his bloody hands. And then, sensing his plans unraveling, Red Skull blew up Skullhouse, allegedly, with Sinthea and all of Cap's friends still inside, to the horror of Captain America. They were in the basement, but it was an armored bunker and they were insulated from the blast. Everyone was still alive though, the blast was fake, except Red Skull and Captain America, who ended up dying. But a guy named Black Crow showed up to save Cap. And then Captain America walked out with a lifeless Red Skull in his arms as the Sisters of Sin phased through the walls and followed him. They weren't there to fight. Sinthea just wanted her father's body. They brought his body to a giant funeral pyre and she spit on his face before tossing his body into the fire and walking away with her entourage, her black cape fluttering in the wind. Hercules and Star Fox went to Skullhouse and got the Red Skull's aging equipment and brought it to Avengers Mansion to try to save Steve, who was still aging. When they set it up and put him in the chamber, Mother Superior and her disciples attacked, phasing through the walls of the chamber. And with the machine on, they attacked Steve, and the rays from the machine saved Steve. They de-aged him, but they also de-aged Sinthea and her Sisters of Sin to their true ages and a childlike state. It was later that Susan Scarborough, as Mother Night, reorganized the orphans into a neo-Hitlerjugend for a second iteration of the Sisters of Sin, and Sinthea took on the name Sin. Captain America's old girlfriend Bernie had called him saying a bunch of teenagers were missing, so he had Cersei of the Eternals de-age him to 15 years old for 48 hours, and he went to New York City, where he ran into two girls from the Sisters of Sin who were pretending to be runaways like himself and collecting these vagrant children. And it turns out that the sisters were kidnapping the runaways and taking them to a youth camp called Camp Rage to be indoctrinated by headmistress Mother Night to her evil and her hatred. Investigating the camp, Steve ran into Sinthea, now just Sin, the head sister to Mother Night. She didn't care that he was a teenager. She was beating him with her bow staff, trying to break all his bones. And the sisters beat 15-year-old Steve Rogers right to death's door. But Steve reverted to his adult form right at the right time and beat the sisters and took down the camp. He took down Mother Night as well, but Sin got away. Sin went back to work as a division chief for her resurrected father, Red Skull, along with other heads of the underworld like Baron Strucker, Zola, Taskmaster, Power Broker, the Scourge, and others. Many years later, S.H.I.E.L.D. caught her and sent Sin to a re-education facility where they convinced her that she was a normal girl and her name was Erica Holstein, where she completely forgot her horrific past and upbringing. A general named General Lucan had put out a kill order on Red Skull. Right after this, Crossbones, one of Red Skull's most loyal followers, tracked down Red Skull's daughter, the fake Erica Holstein, and kidnapped her, taking her right out of that S.H.I.E.L.D. compound. Crossbones tortured and interrogated Erica until S.H.I.E.L.D.'s reprogramming failed and she finally remembered who she was. Sin was back. Grateful to Crossbones, she hooked up with him, and then they went on a killing spree together, now dating each other and cutting a bloody swath across the heartland of America. They then broke into a secret AIM lab and had a big shootout with S.H.I.E.L.D., Captain America, and Sharon Carter, and a MODOK squad of hive mind military units that used to be people. It turns out the Red Skull was revived again, and it was living in the mind of General Lucan, battling for control of Lucan's body. Sid and Crossbones didn't know that, but they went to go after Lucan, who they thought had killed Red Skull. They wanted to crash a plane full of explosives right out to the gala he was at in London. They ended up in Lucan's penthouse, started working for him when they figured out who he was, that Lucan was Red Skull. And she began helping him with his plot to kill Captain America. And killed he was. Captain America was shot on the steps of the courthouse, apparently by Crossbones, where Steve was supposed to stand trial for his part in the superhuman civil war. Steve was then transported to Mercy Hospital for treatment, which is where Sin was, disguised as a scalpel-wielding registered nurse. It was actually Sin who killed Steve Rogers, as she admitted to Sharon Carter later, after Sharon had been brainwashed to think it was herself. Sin then paired up with a new iteration of the Serpent Squad, along with Viper, Eel, and King Cobra, as they attacked the nerve center for the Asian stock market, a plot by Red Skull to damage tomorrow's stock market. They then murdered a S.H.I.E.L.D. unit that was to handle Crossbones' transfer to the raft and stole their S.H.I.E.L.D. uniforms so they could go rescue Crossbones, Sin's boyfriend, who was being held on a S.H.I.E.L.D. subcarrier. The Winter Soldier broke into Lucan, Red Skull's penthouse, and attacked him, just as Sin and Crossbones showed up to beat him down. Winter Soldier was about to punch Red Skull through his high-rise window wall, but he said Sputnik, which was Winter Soldier's old programming shutdown code word, and Bucky dropped to the floor as Sin and Crossbones collected themselves. Then Bucky put on the Captain America costume and attacked Sin and Crossbones, shooting and wounding them both in the fight. Back at Red Skull's lair, Sin healed, but then Sharon Carter took Sin at knife point to try to escape from the facility, and she was almost out, but at the voice scanner to the exit, Sin headbutted Sharon, who fell to the ground in a daze. The two ladies fought in the corridor while armed agents looked on in disbelief. It ended with Sin, the victor, sharing on the ground with a knife in her abdomen. But Red Skull was pissed, saying he should have killed her when she was born. As it happens, Captain America was still alive. He was sent back in time, and Sharon Carter was a temporal anchor to this time period, a connection between the two. And Sin had messed it up. Angry at her dad for what he said, Sin went to a presidential debate with a sniper rifle to assassinate Red Skull's secret candidate, Senator Wright. She fired, but the shot was blocked by Captain America's shield. The senator's protective detail rushed him to a limo to escape. At the exit to the campus, Sin was on a rooftop lining up a kill shot with a rocket-propelled grenade, and she fired the grenade, but Bucky jumped right in front of it, blocking the RPG with his shield, and it exploded in midair. Sin and Crossbones were then both taken into custody and held in a Hammer federal holding facility in Colorado. Crossbones managed to get to Sin at the prison, and he kissed her just as the CS riot gas was deployed. Later at the same Hammer prison, Agent Jones offered Sin a spot on his new Thunderbolts team in exchange for the identity of the second shooter. She tried to break out, but Bullseye, dressed as Hawkeye, punched her in the stomach and stopped her. Norman Osborn himself approached Sin and Crossbones, saying he had a mission only they could complete, and he had the only keys out of their cell. He said that a reborn Captain America under his control would be a tremendous asset, even if Red Skull's mind was in Steve Rogers' body. Their mission was to track down Red Skull in an Arnim Zola type suit for Osborn to do his procedure, and they found Red Skull, promising to fix him in Latveria, where Arnim Zola also was. Zola was trying to find when Captain America was, since, as I said, he wasn't killed. He was sent back to World War II. Later, aboard an AIM airship, Skullcap boot-stomped Sharon Carter while Sin cheered on her dad with his new Captain America body. Vision phased through a wall, but Sin froze him with a weapon that Zola had made with AIM tech. They shot an Avengers Quinjet out of the sky, and then a battle erupted at the foot of the Washington Monument in Washington, D.C. In the battle, Sin was knocked out, and then an explosion disfigured her face, turning it all red, just like her father's. Then Sin was sent to a secure housing facility for treatment at the Kurtzberg Institute for the Criminally Insane. In a massive riot at the institute, Baron Zemo came up to her to ask how to kill Bucky Barnes. Max Lomer, the villain known as Masterman, who was also in love with Sin, freed Sin from the prison and told her he loved her and wanted to be with her. This happened to be at the time when Sinthea had taken on the mantle and had become the new Red Skull. During a 2011 event called Fear Itself, Sin began working with Baron Zemo because they wanted to find an ancient book that used to belong to her father called the Book of the Skull that would tell them where a mystical hammer was located. They got the book, but Sin broke away from Zemo and she went after the hammer all on her own. She found it and acquired the mystical hammer of Skadi. With the hammer in her possession, Sin was transformed into the powerful Skadi and became Odin's brother Cole Borson's champion during the event. And as Skadi, she attacked Washington, D.C. with an army of Nazis under her command, but it was Steve Rogers with Thor's hammer Mjolnir that ultimately stopped her and her hammer. Later, after a cloud of Terrigen mist spread across the globe, it gave rise to new humans, a new wave of inhuman incubation and birth. One of these new humans was a kid named Lucas, and Lucas wound up in the care of Hydra. Sin planned to use Lucas-contaminated blood in a bomb that she'd explode in the atmosphere to sterilize the world. She had an antidote, and that antidote would only be given to Hydra agents. And so in the wake of a sterilized world, a new Hydra reign would begin. So Sin and Hydra brought Lucas to Ecuador to drain his blood for the bomb. In All New Captain America, Sam Wilson as Captain America was with the Ian Rogers version of Nomad. This Nomad was created by Zemo's friend Arnim Zola in Dimension Z. So the pair went to Ecuador to raid the Hydra base where Lucas was. There they were sent on an elevator all the way to Bagalia, where they ran into new Hydra, Sin included. This new Hydra high command was Sin, Viper, Cobra, Crossbones, Batroc, Taskmaster, Baron Blood, Armadillo, and Baron Zemo. Zemo ended up killing Nomad, and so Captain America teamed up with Misty Knight to penetrate their Hydra stronghold. And that's when he ran right into Sin, who had welcomed him into the castle. Sin told Sam that it was her father, Red Skull, who was the reason he became a hero, and this angered Sam. And he was about to attack Sin, but she revealed that she had Sam's family hostage, and if he attacked her, Sin would kill Sam's family. But there's more. She took his wings and his shield and made him jump off a cliff in an attempt to kill him. But he wasn't dead. Sam was rescued by Redwing, and so he went back and attacked Sin, and Sam destroyed the vial with Lucas's blood in it, and in the fight, Sin seemingly perished. But she was still alive, still in Bagalia, along with Red Skull as Rogue and Johnny Storm of the Avengers Unity Squad tried to break in. Red Skull made a fake gambit to distract Rogue, and Sin told him, "That was quick thinking, father." They went with the loot they stole and hid in the vault catacombs beneath Avengers Mansion. And they continued to hang out there since Red Skull had stole Professor X's brain, which is how he was able to make the fake Gambit and control Quicksilver. And after the Unity Squad was disbanded, he still wanted control of Rogue, and Sin told him that mutants wouldn't stop until they got Charles' brain back. Then, defying her father's orders, Sin went after Deadpool, but Deadpool took Sin out with one left hook to the face. Sin and Skull then were dining casually in the mansion while Rogue and Deadpool fought each other in the same room. Deadpool put a Magneto helmet on Rogue's head to protect her from Red Skull's influence, and now with no control, Red Skull and Sin fled the mansion. Rogue flew after them and punched Sin right through a wall. At the start of an event called Secret Empire, Crossbones, Sin, and Madam Hydra were with the Hydra Cap as a war broke out and Hydra locked the heroes of Earth outside of the atmosphere and took over the planet. When Old Man Logan came to the present with tales of Mysterio's treachery in the future, he went on the hunt for the villain. Miss Sinister broke Mysterio out of police custody and brought Mysterio to Sin and Crossbones, who were now the heads of Neo Hydra. They plotted to start the villain uprising that Miss Sinister saw in Old Man Logan's head from the future. Sin wanted to do something to surpass her father, and to do it without cosmic cubes and fake reality rewrites. While Sin looked on from a nearby window, their trial run with Mysterio was to use Mysterio to trick Logan's mind to think he was attacking the Sinister Six when in actuality it was the Avengers he was fighting. But Miss Sinister wasn't happy with Sin's trial run and with the exposure, and she bickered with Sin over the best course of action. Except this Sin was Mysterio in disguise, and now he knew her plan. Old Man Logan and his team attacked a secret Neo Hydra base in the Pacific Ocean where Sin, Miss Sinister, and Crossbones were hanging out. Mysterio tricked some Hydra agents into thinking Logan and Jubilee were Sin and Crossbones, and they opened fire on the duo, striking Crossbones and taking him down. The rest of the team showed up and they all fought a giant battle inside the compound. Sin unloaded a clip into the charging Wolverine and he fell, his healing factor still shot too. And it was Forge who ended up taking Sin and the others into custody at the end. And that's where she remains to this day, although she may break out as she has in the past. And with that, we've come to the end of our story. That's a wrap on this one, my friends. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and you'll be one of the first to know when I upload videos just like this each and every week. I'm Jesse, this is JLS Comics, and I'll see you soon.